Hello and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to talk about the domain name system, otherwise known as DNS. If you have ever visited a website, then you have, whether you knew it or not, used DNS. It's very common, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at just pretty much the basics, how it works, and why do we need it. Note, DNS is a very big topic. There's a lot to be said about it, so we're not going to talk about things like name syntax or domain namespace or anything like that. This is just the basics, but keep in mind there's a lot of information here on DNS. Okay, so let's actually get started. Well, what is the purpose of DNS? Why do we need it? Well, if we go back to the website example, imagine all of the websites you visit in one day or 1 week. And now take away all the names and replace them with unique IP addresses. Now, do you think you'd be able to remember all of them? Whether you visit 10 websites a day or 200 websites, different websites in a week. Well, the point is it can be kind of hard to remember the IP addresses. If you're now getting familiar with IP addressing, you notice that after you start looking at a few, it can be a little bit confusing to remember one from the other. I mean, they are numbers. It's easy to forget and to mix them up. But what is easy? Well, it is easy to remember names. I can remember the names of hundreds, if not thousands, of websites. If you want to take an analogy of friends, I can remember my friends' names much more easily than I can remember their address of where they live. It's the same thing really with DNS. So the purpose really is to resolve a name into an IP address, because our PCs, when they craft IP packets, they need an IP address in order to send a packet on its way. And everything in the middle between us and the destination needs that IP address in order to route the packet properly. So let's make it easy on ourselves by using names, and then let's give the PC and everything else in between what it needs by giving it an IP address. Well, DNS is the link between the two. So given a name, any name, give me the IP address. And any device might already know that IP address. Perhaps it's configured locally, or it's already used DNS and it's stored a copy of that information locally. Or maybe it doesn't. So maybe it has to go ahead and use DNS and query a DNS server in order to figure out the answer. If you want to take an example, think of a website you've never visited before. Any state in America has like a tourism site or a state government site. Think of a state and throw it into your browser, and if you've never visited before, then DNS is going to be used in order to resolve that name into an IP address. Okay, so that's the basic purpose. Let's go ahead now and actually take a look at a basic working example to look at the process of how we use DNS. Okay, so here's our network, and we've got a router and a switch and a few devices hanging off of that switch. If we look at these devices, the first one, let's look at PC1. So as a user, this is the PC we're going to use in order to do our job every day. Let's say this is our office network. And every day we need to access some information from the wiki. And so this device here is my wiki, and it has an IP address as well. Well, this is a pretty small network, pretty simple to remember the wiki IP address if we had to, but let's imagine we have 49 other wikis we have to access every day. They all have different names and IP addresses. So like we said, all the IP addresses would be hard to remember. So let's walk through an example. If we had to access this wiki, how would DNS be used? Well, we open up a browser, we type in my wiki, and we hit enter. So the PC1 is going to check to see if it knows how to resolve my wiki into an IP address. Maybe it has it cached somewhere. Maybe it's visited before. But for our purposes, let's say this is a new wiki. We've never accessed it before. So we don't know what the IP address should be. So in that case, PC1 is going to say, okay, I can't resolve it. In my TCP IP settings, I am configured with the IP address of a DNS server should I need to use it. Well, I need to use it, so let's go ahead and actually contact the DNS server. And so the DNS server up here is a device which is responsible for maintaining all of the DNS records. And a DNS record lists the name and the corresponding IP address. Okay? And so PC1 is going to create a packet, and this is known as a DNS request. And it sends the request to the DNS server, and it pretty much says this. Hey, I'm trying to access my wiki. What is the IP address of my wiki? And so then the DNS server is going to look in its records, hopefully find an entry that says my wiki, find the corresponding address of 10.10.10.5, and then it creates a response, and it sends it back to PC1 saying, okay, my wiki uses the IP address of 10.10.10.5. Now we can go ahead and PC1 can proceed with creating an IP packet. It now knows the destination IP address of my wiki, and it can go ahead then and encapsulate that in the Ethernet frame and send it on its way. And eventually, PC1 can contact my wiki. Okay, so that's a very simple example of needing to resolve a name into an IP address in order to contact it. And if we don't know the information locally, we need to use a DNS server. The DNS server will query its records and then send us a response, and that response will contain the IP address of the destination we're trying to reach. And that's it. That is a basic working example of how we use DNS to resolve names into IP addresses. Thanks for watching.